Well, the small business sector is finding it increasingly difficult to make inroads in the business market, either as main contractors or some subcontractors. It's just a mountain to climb, but are there smaller players not able to close some gaps in their systems or business models, always playing against bigger and more established players, proving to be a barrier for smaller players to also have to get up against? Or is it about experience or lack thereof? In this section, we're taking a look at opportunities for small businesses to be a part of the supply chain of bigger companies. Jessica Hubbard from Finweek, Alan Gibson, Sales Executive at Raise Corp, and Pavlo Fatidis from Auric Business Incubator joining me at the desk to take a look at this very key opportunity for small businesses. Pavlo, I'll start off with you. How open are big businesses to procuring from smaller businesses?
I think in word, very much so. But in action, it's not that easy for a number of reasons. Probably if we take a very big picture view, there's no relationship really between big business and small business. There was a wonderful study that was done, I think in 2006, by Standard & Poor rating agency. And what they found is more or less about 80% of economic activity in South Africa is in the hands of 300 or about 300 large businesses. So we live in a very concentrated economy. Within that space, the role of small business becomes quite challenging. If you look at more developed economies, the American economy, Singapore, other economies that have a lot more vibrancy in them, the stats are reversed. Small businesses have a definitive role. They are there to innovate. They are there to identify new opportunities, new markets. Big businesses have got marketing muscle, distribution power. Small businesses sell their innovations to big businesses when big businesses acquire them, and big businesses exploit that innovation. And that symbiotic relationship works incredibly well. We don't have it here in South Africa.
Yeah. For a small business that sees an opportunity to be a supplier to a big business, what are some of the key considerations? Because many small businesses say it's expensive to go through accreditation processes. For example, some businesses require now increasingly an understanding of your own environmental footprint to keep in line with their corporate governance rules.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously very challenging. What the problem we find with it is that a lot of these entrepreneurs aren't having the opportunity to actually find out what is needed of them, firstly. So what does the ideal supplier look like, and how can we go back and actually get them the right accreditation or the right systems in place that they could start doing business with some of these larger organizations? But we're finding it very challenging to sit down with large companies and actually get that information from them. What they need. Yes, correct. So in other words, they prefer to use existing suppliers as opposed to looking at smaller business and giving them the opportunity. Again, so what we look at is actually trying to find out what is needed and then providing those entrepreneurs with the right accreditation or the right systems to put in place, and then getting them an opportunity to do work with them, basically, yeah.
I suppose, I mean, this just brings it back, Jessica, to the fact that businesses then need to see, identify that niche area of opportunity that's not being met by a larger supplier, or indicate how they can do that better. So it's about marketing and selling yourself to the big business.
Yeah, we had this discussion beforehand that there are many small and very innovative businesses out there, but they're also not proactive enough on their side, and they don't seem hungry enough in many cases for the business. So for example, Pavlo would contact a guy to come and work on his roof, and he's identified someone who he thinks would do the job well, be efficient, but the guy just doesn't respond. And you can't work like that in this economy. You've got to be hungry for the work. You've got to respond.
You've got to be professional, basically, is what you're trying to say.
You've got to be organized. You've got to have payment systems in place. Otherwise, that person is going to move on. And you can't afford to be unprofessional.
But do you think also this plays into the fact, and sees where that it's cost prohibitive for smaller businesses who don't often have access to financing to go through a lot of the processes or create the type of business that is reliable for a bigger business to be able to procure from them?
Well, look, obviously finances are a big problem for smaller companies to start operating. But I think also there are some fundamental basics that smaller businesses tend to overlook and get excited in starting a company. I think if you don't have the gap, if you don't have the time that you can dedicate and should dedicate to the business, then you're not going to go anywhere. You know, I think there's just too much excitement at the moment to start a business without necessarily even knowing where is the market, what are the challenges, who's currently playing there. If I want to be a contractor to this huge organization, who else is currently, in their supply chain? Are there gaps that I can capitalize on? So I think, one needs to take a step back and say, what are some of the gaps that exist in this current state of affairs which I can come up and fill? And I think if you have that sort of mix, it then becomes easy to approach financing agencies and say, I've got a plan. I mean, it all has to go back to a plan. I've got a plan, it is well researched, and all I need is financial support to take it forward. And if you can prove
Is it that easy, Pablo?
No, I've got a slightly different take on this, a harder take, a much harder take, in the sense that if I'm a big business, I've got to deliver on a consistent level. Here I am, I supply nationally, I'm not going to compromise my supply chain. And absolutely, big business, don't compromise your supply chain, because when you do, and you allow a small business in that doesn't meet your service level agreement standards, you compromise your business and you don't build strength in that small business. As a small business, I think the biggest issue over there is, what is a business? Most people think a business is a product, but a business actually has to be a system of delivery. If I'm going to take on the supply of a large business and I have not built a scalable system to deliver at the service level agreement of that large business, you should not be allowed in. So when it comes to supply development,
I like the word scalable, because that's important, because
scalable
you're
delivery.
not only going to grow, but the big business is going to grow, and you have to grow to be able to meet their needs.
Yes, you've got to meet that big business's requirement. So when it comes to dealing with small businesses, the benefits are going to be, you'll have innovation, they will come in on price, they will come in on value. In other words, I'll offer you the same thing, but I'll offer you at the same price, but you'll get more value out of it. In those instances, be patient with that small business and allow them to scale up. Don't say, I see you produce 5,000 units a month. We want to order 5,000 units a day. That would be irresponsible. You, the big business, lose, the small business folds. Rather say, I've got access for you at 5 stores. Once you've proven yourself there, I'll give you access to 10 stores and help them migrate up that path. In that instance, the finance becomes available.
But my question to you, Pablo, is what happens if you are a small business and you're offering a good service and you're doing the job, but you just can't survive because you're not getting paid on time and you're just not getting your payments on time? What happens then?
You die. You die, and everything
So
you've
it's
built
about the
dies with
contract
it.
at the beginning.
It's about the contract, but let's just talk about this payment issue, because that's a very interesting challenge that exists between big business and small business. The responsibility is not always, when one points a finger, there are 3 fingers pointing back. In many instances, when I look at entrepreneurs, they don't start a business to run a back office. In fact, every entrepreneur I know has a passionate dislike for red tape and admin. Yet, if you're not running that back office sufficiently and you can't produce your invoices correctly, you will not be paid. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But there are many instances where I see perfectly produced invoices being submitted to big businesses for work done and delivered, accredited, signed off, and that small business is not being paid. Is it the inefficiency of the big business, or is it an idea that we can get another 30 days of cash flow? That impact on that small business is devastating.
So what sort of recourse then would that small business have?
Absolutely none. If you really think about it, I can't sue you. The moment I actually turn up the heat, you threaten me with the possibility of not using me as a supplier.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say to you, it is remarkably unpatriotic, because that small business, the one that I have in mind that's currently going through a problem like that, the beginning of the year had 4 staff. Right now they've got 16 staff. They're sitting over 120 days with one of the biggest businesses in this country having delivered work.
I mean, surely this should be in the media or something to get someone to listen. But this is, as you say, an issue. It's specific to this person, but many small businesses are dealing with this. What could be one solution? I mean, does it involve a specific contract at the beginning of the relationship or the partnership to lay out exactly how payments work? And is that enough? I mean, do businesses abide by that contract?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of a few things, and Pablo has mentioned a few, but the contract is one thing, but a lot of times it's also understanding what is required of the entrepreneur, and that's not stated up front. Then a direct contract is made with the entrepreneur, and that is his sort of only client. When they can't get payment, or they have that direct umbilical cord sort of syndrome, and they move business and they cut it off, that business dies, you know, and you know, these corporates aren't actually looking at what entrepreneurship is. So we need to start educating them on that. But again, it's very difficult to...
Is this not something government should and could get involved in the interests of...
They do and they have.
Yeah.
So we had a set of codes, the BE codes. Inside there was something called enterprise development. It ran from 2004 until recently. It's now being revisited. When I look at the codes now, they are onerous beyond anything that I've seen in a long time. And you know, you sit back and you try and understand why the codes have become so severe. And perhaps it might be because the codes as they were originally designed were designed to have a spirit in mind that said, big business, support the development of small business, because they're the job generators. 68% of private sector jobs come from small businesses. They are the people who introduce innovation. There are a whole lot of benefits to doing so. It creates an inclusive economy, which creates a stable economy and a democratic environment.
But they haven't worked, is what you're saying.
It hasn't worked. So
what
what
is the
government then does is it says, why hasn't it worked? We can see where perhaps there were loopholes that were completely capitalized. We're now going to tighten up on those loopholes, plus go an extra 3 or 4 miles to really make sure they're tight. So that's the way the pendulum swings. If a set of codes was produced that has not yielded the outcomes, and it's not yielded the outcomes not because people have broken the law, but because there were loopholes in it. Those loopholes have been tightened so tight that these next set of codes, I think, are going to be enforcing a kind of supply development that's going to be really challenging for big and small businesses to tackle.
Let's talk about when a small business should perhaps consider walking away from a very lucrative deal at face value with a big client or big company. When would you say, give us examples of when they should walk away?
You know, it's a very difficult one to answer because, you know, for a small business to get its work it's a huge honor, and you'd want to take that contract. The problem is not understanding the dynamics and what the long-term aspects might be of the business, because we know through research in the GEM report that 96% of all small businesses fail within the first 10 years. These guys are hungry to get any work, you know. So if you give them a contract, they're going to sign at the dotted line and say, great, we're on board. But those terms might be not in favor of the entrepreneur. And then what happens is, again, that umbilical cord gets cut and we lose another business. So how do we change that dynamic in terms of growing entrepreneurs in a sustainable and meaningful manner where they are able to find other opportunities? And those guys that they have on their supply chain will actually say, great, you're not just contracted to us. We want you to do work with us. However, there are other opportunities as well. We're not tying entrepreneurs up just into one corporate. For me, that is the big problem at this stage.
You agree with that? You're nodding there, yeah.
No.
But it sounds like we need a lawyer at the beginning, at the start of all of this.
Yes.
I actually do agree. I think that as much as one is hungry to get business, I think running away from a contract can actually do you more good than than bad.
Sure.
I think in some cases, if you see that you won't be able, for example, to deliver on this contract, instead of taking it and suffering and messing up your reputation before you even build it. I think take some time and say, actually, I don't have the scale, I don't have the capacity, and within the next 5 years, I will develop the capacity that will be required to perform this business. Otherwise, if you take it on and you do a job that is not,
you can't meet the expectations.
Then no one can ever want to touch you again, because they will look at you and they will always remember you as that person was given an opportunity and they missed it.
Certainly is a tough job, Pavlo, to have your head basically rule the decision over your heart, because in that instance, could be seen as kind of the ultimate boost to your business, having this lucrative contract. Your thoughts on that?
Look, there are two things that drive an entrepreneur. The one is very obvious, and it's often spoken about, and that's passion. Because if you don't have passion for whatever it is you do, you don't have the fuel to get over all these hurdles and all these obstacles, and every single block you come to in the road, you've got to find a way around. So you need to be passionate about what it is that you do. But the second thing is often never spoken about. And when I speak to entrepreneurs, most of them have forgotten why they do what they do. And in my view, that should be a single purpose, and that's to build your business into an asset of value. And the reason that's important is that as an entrepreneur, your business is your pension. So if you're faced in a situation where you've got one big client, and that client is bullying you, and that client says to you, you can supply no other client, You've got to then make a decision in sticking with it or leaving it. Will it help me build my business into an independent asset that of a day I can sell, because that sale is my retirement? And the moment you start thinking with that mind, it's remarkable how questions and answers become a lot easier in your own business.